You know, I've been getting a lot of calls this winter, more than usual, and they're not from patients with unusual symptoms or rare conditions. They're from people in their late 50s, 60s, early 70s, people who've been doing everything they thought they were supposed to do, and they're calling because the flu knocked them flat in a way it never has before. And I'm not talking about a bad cold, I'm talking about weeks of recovery, fatigue that lingers for a month, secondary infections, hospital visits, things that, frankly, caught them off guard. Thank you for being here. I'm a physician who spent most of my career working with adults in the second half of life, listening to their concerns, learning what actually matters as the body changes. This channel is about honest, practical conversations. No hype, just what I wish more people understood about aging well. If you find these discussions helpful, a like or subscribe helps others find them too. But more importantly, I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. What I keep hearing is some version of the same thing. I don't understand. I got my shot. I wash my hands. I take my vitamins. Why did this hit me so hard? And honestly, that's a fair question. It deserves a real answer, not a headline, not a statistic, a real, thoughtful explanation. Because here's what I've come to understand after 30+ years of treating older adults. The reason this flu season is hitting people over 55 harder than expected isn't just about the virus. It's not just about whether you got vaccinated or whether this year's strain is particularly nasty. It's about what's happening inside your body quietly. Gradually, that changes how you respond to infection. It's about immune systems that don't fire the way they used to. It's about medications that may be dampening your defenses without anyone telling you. It's about sleep patterns, stress levels, nutritional gaps, and everyday habits that seem harmless but add up over time. And none of this is being explained clearly. Not in the news, not in most doctors' offices, not anywhere. So that's what I want to do today. I want to walk you through what's really going on, not to frighten you, but to help you understand your own body better. Because understanding is the first step toward protecting yourself in a way that actually works. The immune system at 55 and beyond. Let me start with something that should be talked about more but rarely is. Your immune system ages. Just like your joints, your eyes, your skin, your immune system goes through changes as you get older, and these changes are significant. There's a term we use in medicine, immunosenescence. It sounds technical, but the concept is simple. It refers to the gradual decline in immune function that comes with aging. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow process that begins, for most people, somewhere in their 40s or 50s, and becomes more pronounced with each passing decade. Now, what does that actually mean in practical terms? It means your body doesn't recognize threats as quickly as it used to. When a virus enters your system, there's a delay, sometimes a subtle one, sometimes more significant, before your immune cells mount a response. And in that window, the virus has more time to replicate, to spread, to cause damage. It also means the response itself may be weaker. Fewer antibodies, less coordination between the different parts of your immune system. And sometimes, paradoxically, more inflammation, which sounds like it should be protective, but often ends up causing collateral damage to your own tissues. I had a patient this winter, I'll call her Eleanor, 63 years old, retired librarian, extremely conscientious about her health. She came in after what she described as the worst flu of my life. She'd had the vaccine in October. She avoided crowds during the holidays. She did everything right. But when she got sick, it didn't follow the pattern she expected. Instead of the usual 5 or 6 days of misery followed by gradual improvement, she had 3 weeks of fatigue so profound she could barely get out of bed. Then a cough that wouldn't quit. Then a mild pneumonia that required antibiotics. She looked at me and said, "This isn't how flu used to feel. What changed?" And the honest answer was, "You did. Not in a bad way. Not in a way that means something is wrong with you. But your immune system at 63 is not your immune system at 43, and that difference matters. Why the symptoms look different? This is something I try to explain to patients, but it's tricky because it goes against what most people expect. When you're younger and you get the flu, you feel terrible. High fever, body aches, that overwhelming sense of being sick. And as unpleasant as that is, it's actually a sign that your immune system is working. The fever, the inflammation, the fatigue, those are all responses generated by your own body to fight the infection. But as you age, that inflammatory response often becomes blunted, which means you might not get the same dramatic symptoms. You might not spike a high fever. You might not have the classic flu feeling right away, and that can be dangerous because it delays recognition. I've seen patients in their 70s come in with what they thought was just fatigue and mild confusion, and it turned out they had full-blown influenza that had been brewing for days. By the time we caught it, they were already developing complications. So one of the things I want you to understand is this. In older adults, flu doesn't always announce itself the way you expect. If you're feeling unusually tired, if your thinking seems foggy, if something just feels off, don't assume it's nothing. Pay attention. The role of medications. Now, here's something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. The medications many of you are taking may be affecting your immune function in ways that no one has explained to you. I'm not saying these medications are bad. Many of them are necessary. But the reality is, certain drugs that millions of older adults take every day, have immune-modulating effects that can reduce your ability to fight infection. Let me give you a few examples. Proton pump inhibitors, the medications people take for acid reflux. Things like omeprazole or pantoprazole have been shown in multiple studies to increase the risk of respiratory infections. Part of this is because stomach acid is actually a defense mechanism. It kills many of the pathogens you swallow. When you suppress that acid chronically, you're removing one layer of protection. Corticosteroids, even at low doses, suppress immune function. If you're on prednisone for arthritis or an autoimmune condition, your ability to mount a rapid immune response is compromised. That's not a side effect, that's literally how the drug works. But it also means you're more vulnerable when a virus comes along. Even certain blood pressure medications and statins have been associated with subtle effects on immune cells. The data is mixed, and I'm not suggesting anyone stop taking these drugs. But I am suggesting that if you're on multiple medications, you should be aware that your immune landscape may not be the same as someone who isn't. I had a patient, we'll call him Bernard, 68 years old, former truck driver, solid guy, stoic, never complained about anything. He was on 6 different medications when I first met him: blood pressure, cholesterol, reflux, diabetes, a sleep aid, and an anti-inflammatory for his back. When he got the flu last January, it hit him hard, really hard. And as we were trying to figure out why his recovery was so slow, I started looking at his medication list with fresh eyes. 3 of those drugs had known effects on immune function: the reflux medication, the steroid-based anti-inflammatory, and one of his blood pressure pills, which had been associated in some research with reduced T-cell activity. We made some adjustments, not drastic ones, just thoughtful substitutions where possible, and a conversation about whether every single medication was still necessary. By the following winter, he was in better shape. Not perfect, but better. The point is, nobody had ever talked to him about this. Nobody had connected the dots between his medication regimen and his immune resilience. And that's true for a lot of people. Sleep and immunity. Let me talk about sleep for a minute, because this is one of those areas where the research is clear but the message hasn't gotten through. Sleep is not optional for immune function. It's not a luxury, it's foundational. During deep sleep, your body does critical repair work. Your immune cells are replenished. Inflammatory markers are regulated. Memory consolidation happens, including immune memory, the kind that helps your body remember how to fight infections it's seen before. When you don't sleep well, and many older adults don't, all of that gets disrupted, and the effects accumulate over time. I had a patient a few years ago, I'll call her Miriam, 61, still working as an office manager. She told me she'd been sleeping poorly for years. 4, maybe 5 hours a night, broken by frequent awakenings. She'd tried various things, melatonin, herbal teas, nothing really worked. And every winter, without fail, she got sick. Not just once, multiple times. A cold in November, the flu in January, another cold in March. Her kids joked that she should buy stock in tissue paper. When we finally addressed her sleep, really addressed it, with a proper evaluation and some changes to her nighttime routine and environment, things started to shift. The following year, she got one cold, that's it. She told me it was the healthiest winter she'd had in a decade. Now, I'm not saying sleep cures everything, but I am saying that chronic sleep deprivation is an under-recognized immune suppressor. And if you're not sleeping well, your ability to fight off infections, especially as you get older, is compromised. Nutrition and immune resilience. Let's talk about food. Not in a complicated way. I'm not going to give you a meal plan or tell you to buy expensive supplements. But there are some nutritional factors that genuinely matter for immune function, especially in older adults. Protein is one. As you age, your body becomes less efficient at using the protein you eat. At the same time, your muscles and immune cells, which are built from protein, need adequate supply to function well. Many older adults don't eat enough protein. They eat lighter meals, they skip breakfast, they fill up on carbohydrates because they're easy. And I get it, appetite changes. Cooking for 1 or 2 people feels like a lot of effort. But when protein intake drops, immune function suffers. Zinc is another one. It's essential for immune cell development, and many older adults are mildly zinc deficient without knowing it. It's not dramatic, not the kind of deficiency that causes obvious symptoms, but enough to matter when you need your immune system to perform. Vitamin D is in the same category. It plays a role in immune regulation, and a lot of people, especially those who spend most of their time indoors, are running low. I'm not saying everyone needs to start taking supplements. That's a conversation to have with your doctor. But I am saying that what you eat matters. And for older adults, it matters even more because the margin for error is smaller, the stress connection. This is one of those areas where people nod along but don't really believe it applies to them. So let me be direct. Chronic stress suppresses immune function. This is not speculation, it's biology. When you're under stress, whether it's from caregiving, financial worry, isolation, family conflict, or just the background hum of uncertainty that comes with aging in a complicated world, your body produces cortisol, and cortisol, in elevated amounts over extended periods, dampens immune activity. It's a survival mechanism from an evolutionary standpoint. If you're running from a predator, you don't need your immune system firing on all cylinders. You need your muscles and your reflexes. The immune system gets temporarily turned down. But the problem is, modern stress isn't short-term. It doesn't end when you reach safety. It lingers. And when cortisol stays elevated for weeks or months, your immune system pays the price. I've seen it in patients. The ones who are going through difficult divorces, the ones caring for a spouse with dementia, the ones who just lost a job or a sibling or a sense of purpose. They get sick more often, and when they do get sick, they recover more slowly. This isn't weakness, it's physiology. And acknowledging it is the first step toward doing something about it. What about vaccines? Let me say something about flu vaccination, because I know this is a topic where people have strong opinions on all sides. Flu vaccines work. They're not perfect, but they work. They reduce the likelihood of infection, and more importantly, they reduce the severity of illness if you do get infected. For older adults, that severity reduction can be the difference between staying home with chicken soup and ending up in the hospital with pneumonia. But here's what I want you to understand. The vaccine works differently in older bodies. Because of immunosenescence, That immune aging I mentioned earlier, older adults often produce a weaker antibody response to vaccination. This doesn't mean the vaccine is useless. It means the protection it offers is more variable and potentially less robust than in a younger person. That's one reason the high-dose flu vaccine exists, the one specifically designed for people over 65. It contains more antigen, more of the stuff that stimulates your immune system to compensate for the blunted response. If you're over 65 and you've been getting the standard flu shot, ask your doctor about the high-dose version. It's a reasonable conversation to have. But I also want to make a broader point. Vaccination is not a magic shield. It's one layer of protection. If you're relying solely on the flu shot while ignoring your sleep, your stress, your nutrition, and your medication list, you're not fully protecting yourself. The goal is to build resilience on multiple fronts. The vaccine is part of that, but it's not the whole picture. When to worry? Let me give you something practical. If you're over 55 and you start feeling sick, even if it seems mild at first, there are some signs you should take seriously. Confusion or mental fogginess, that's worse than usual. That's a red flag. Older adults don't always spike fevers with infections, but they often show changes in cognition. If you're not thinking clearly, don't brush it off. Shortness of breath. Even mild shortness of breath that's new or different from your baseline. This can indicate that the infection is affecting your lungs, which is the complication we worry about most. Symptoms that improve for a few days and then suddenly get worse. This pattern, feeling better, then crashing, often signals a secondary bacterial infection. It requires medical attention. Extreme fatigue that doesn't match the severity of your other symptoms. If you're barely able to get out of bed but you don't have much fever or cough, something more serious may be going on. I'm not trying to make you anxious. Most flu cases, even in older adults, resolve without major complications. But the earlier you catch a problem, the easier it is to treat. So pay attention. Trust your instincts. And don't assume that toughing it out is the right approach. Rethinking resilience. I want to step back now and make a larger point. We've spent decades in medicine focused on treatment, on interventions, on doing things to people once they're already sick, and that's important. That's saved lives. But for older adults facing things like flu season, I think the more important question is, how do we build bodies that resist illness in the first place? And if illness comes, how do we recover well? That's resilience. And it's not about one magic pill or one special supplement. It's about the accumulation of everyday choices that either support or undermine your immune function. It's about sleeping 7 hours instead of 5. It's about eating enough protein and not skipping meals. It's about managing stress, not perfectly, but meaningfully. It's about reviewing your medication list with a critical eye. It's about staying connected to other people, because loneliness is its own form of immune suppression. None of this is dramatic. None of it makes headlines. But over time, these things matter more than any single intervention. What I tell my patients. When someone in their 60s or 70s asks me how to prepare for flu season, I don't give them a list of products to buy. I ask them questions. How are you sleeping? How are you eating? What's stressing you out? Are you moving your body regularly? Do you have people you talk to? Are you outside at all? Getting some sunlight, some fresh air? And then I look at their medications. Are all of these still necessary? Are any of them potentially blunting immune function? Is there anything we could simplify? These aren't glamorous conversations. There's no technology involved, no fancy scans or panels, but they're the conversations that actually matter. Because here's what I've learned over 30 years. The patients who do best aren't the ones with the most aggressive medical care. They're the ones who have the basics in order. Sleep, food, movement, connection, purpose. That's what protects you. Not perfectly, not against everything, but meaningfully. Closing thoughts. This flu season is hitting adults over 55 harder than expected. That's real. It's worth taking seriously. But it's not cause for panic. What it is, I think, is an invitation. an invitation to look at your health not just in terms of tests and treatments, but in terms of resilience, in terms of how well your body can handle what life throws at it. Your immune system at 60 is not your immune system at 40. That's just the truth. But that doesn't mean you're helpless. It means you need different strategies. More attention to the basics. More willingness to ask questions. More awareness of how the choices you make every day, the ones that don't seem medical at all, are shaping your ability to fight infection. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's your experience been this flu season? Have you noticed changes in how you respond to illness as you've gotten older? Have you had conversations with your doctor about any of this? These discussions matter. They help people feel less alone, and sometimes hearing someone else's story is what finally makes things click. Take care of yourselves, not with fear, but with wisdom. And if there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's that understanding your body is the first step toward protecting it. I'll see you next time.